Here's a long, plain-paragraph emotional story written for your title. The church bells were supposed to ring with joy, but instead they echoed with shame. Clara stood in her wedding dress, her heart crushed as the whispers of guests cut through the silence left behind by her fleeing groom. "Too fat," someone muttered. "He couldn't go through with it," another whispered. The humiliation burned deeper than any wound. She had dreamed of love, of a future, of a family, but all she was left with was mascara streaking down her cheeks and a bouquet slipping from trembling hands. Everyone left, one by one, until she was alone, discarded at the altar like she didn't deserve happiness. Miles away, Daniel, a struggling single dad, was fighting his own silent battles. He worked 2 jobs just to keep the lights on in their small apartment. His son, 8-year-old Jamie, was bright and tender-hearted but often lonely. Without a mother, he clung to his father's presence, but Daniel knew he couldn't be everything his son needed. Each day was a balancing act of exhaustion, bills piling up, and the ache of wondering if his son would grow up missing the warmth of a mother's embrace. Their worlds collided on a rainy evening. Daniel had stopped by the corner bakery, a rare treat for Jamie who loved chocolate muffins. Clara sat outside in the rain, her wedding gown soaked and her eyes hollow with grief. People walked past her, some glancing with pity, others shaking their heads. But Daniel stopped. He couldn't ignore the pain etched across her face. "Miss, are you all right?" he asked softly, offering his jacket. Clara looked up, startled, and shook her head. "No, I was supposed to be married today," she whispered, her voice cracking. Daniel, who knew the sting of abandonment all too well, his own wife had left when Jamie was a baby, felt something stir in him. He didn't see a too-fat bride. He saw a broken soul who needed kindness. With hesitation, Clara accepted his offer to help. Daniel brought her home, explaining to Jamie that she was a friend who needed a place to rest. Jamie's eyes lit up the moment he saw her, as if instinctively sensing the motherly warmth she carried even in her brokenness. Days turned into weeks. Clara, though still healing, began to find comfort in small routines. She helped Jamie with homework, cooked meals that reminded her of her late mother's kitchen, and filled the house with laughter that had long been missing. Daniel noticed the light returning to his son's eyes, and to his own weary heart. Clara wasn't just a guest anymore, she was becoming family. But not everyone approved. Neighbors gossiped, calling her the runaway bride, and sneering about her weight. Even Daniel's sister confronted him, warning that taking in a woman with so much baggage could only end badly. Daniel struggled. He didn't want to expose Jamie to more heartbreak if Clara decided to leave. He wrestled with doubt, asking himself if he was selfish for letting her stay. Clara too fought her own demons. She feared she was only a burden, that she could never be truly loved. One night, she confessed to Daniel, tears rolling down her face, "I was never good enough for anyone. He left me because I wasn't perfect. What if I disappoint you and Jamie too?" Daniel reached for her hand, his voice firm but tender. "Clara, you don't need to be perfect. You just need to be here. And you already are more than enough for us." That night was a turning point. For the first time, Clara allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, she was worthy of love. The biggest test came months later when Clara's ex-fiancé returned, suddenly apologizing and begging her to come back. The man who had humiliated her claimed he had made a mistake, that he was ready to accept her, despite her flaws. Clara froze. This was the man she once thought she couldn't live without. But as she looked at Daniel, who stood protectively beside Jamie, she realized her true home wasn't with someone who saw her as too fat, but with the family who loved her exactly as she was. With newfound strength, she told her ex, "I don't need your pity or your approval. I have a family who sees my worth." Years passed, and the small apartment that once echoed with struggle became filled with warmth, laughter, and the aroma of Clara's cooking. Jamie grew up knowing what it meant to be loved unconditionally, and Daniel found not just a partner but a soulmate who had turned his weary nights into hopeful mornings. Clara had been abandoned at the altar, but she gained something far more precious, a son who called her Mom, and a man who never once made her feel like she wasn't enough. In the end, their story wasn't about what they had lost, but about what they had built. A home where broken hearts healed, and love, imperfect, real, and unconditional, proved stronger than shame or judgment. Clara's life had changed in ways she could never have imagined. What started as one night of kindness from Daniel had turned into a home she didn't want to leave. Yet deep inside, she still carried scars. Every morning when she looked in the mirror, she remembered the cruel whispers at the church. Every time she went outside, she felt the eyes of strangers judging her. But inside Daniel's small apartment, she found something she had never known before: acceptance. Jamie clung to her like she had always been there. He would run into her arms after school, proudly showing her drawings, begging her to taste the cookies he helped her bake. One night, as she tucked him into bed, Jamie asked a question that pierced her heart. "Clara, can I call you Mom? Just once." Tears stung her eyes. She kissed his forehead and whispered, "You can call me whatever your heart wants." From then on, Jamie never stopped calling her Mom, and each time he said it, the broken pieces of Clara's soul knit together a little more. But with new joy came new challenges. Daniel was still drowning in bills, working himself to exhaustion. Clara wanted to help, but she had been unemployed for months, and everywhere she applied, people dismissed her because of her size or because she had been that bride. The cruel label followed her like a shadow. One day, after yet another rejection, she came home in tears. Daniel found her sitting on the couch, clutching the letter. He knelt in front of her, gently taking it from her trembling hands. "Clara," he said firmly, "you are not defined by what they say. You're stronger than you know. You've already given Jamie more than money ever could. You've given him love." Clara wanted to believe him, but the doubt gnawed at her. She feared she would never truly belong, never contribute enough. Then came a breakthrough. Clara had always loved baking, the same muffins she once used to cheer herself on lonely nights. Jamie encouraged her to share her recipes, and Daniel suggested she try selling at the weekend market. With hesitant courage, Clara set up a small table with muffins, cookies, and pies. At first, people passed her by. But Jamie, ever her biggest cheerleader, shouted to passers-by, "Try my mom's muffins. They're the best in the world." His little voice drew smiles, and slowly, customers stopped. By the end of the day, everything was sold out. That moment sparked something in Clara. She began baking daily, and soon, her small table became the most visited at the market. People weren't talking about the fat bride anymore, they were praising Clara's kitchen, the woman who made desserts with a mother's love. For the first time in years, Clara stood tall, proud of who she was. But not everyone was happy with her success. Daniel's sister, Emily, visited one evening. Her words cut deep. "Daniel, this woman is using you. She's making you think she's family, but what happens when she leaves? Jamie will be crushed." Clara overheard every word. That night, she sat awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering if she really deserved this new life. Maybe Emily was right. Maybe she was just a temporary patch for a family that deserved better. The next morning, Clara packed a bag quietly, intending to slip away. But Jamie woke early and caught her at the door. His small hands clutched hers tightly, his eyes brimming with tears. "Don't leave, Mom. Please, I already lost one mom. Don't make me lose another." The weight of his words shattered every wall she had built. She dropped the bag, fell to her knees, and hugged him tightly. For the first time, she whispered back, "I'm not going anywhere, Jamie. Not ever." When Daniel saw them together, his heart swelled with both fear and hope. He knew then that Clara was no longer just a guest in their lives, she was the missing piece they had been waiting for. Still, he wondered, could he risk opening his heart fully, after all the pain of being abandoned once before? The answer would come sooner than he expected, when Clara's past came knocking in a way neither of them were prepared for. The knock at the door came on a quiet Sunday morning. Clara was pulling muffins out of the oven while Jamie set the table, humming happily. Daniel opened the door, and froze. Standing there in a pressed suit, holding a bouquet of roses, was the last person Clara ever wanted to see. Her ex-fiancé. "Clara," he said smoothly, his eyes darting between her and the cozy apartment. "I made a mistake. I panicked. I want you back. We can still have the life we planned." The words twisted something inside Clara. For years, she had dreamed of him apologizing, begging her to take him back. But now, all she felt was a deep, heavy silence. She glanced at Daniel, whose jaw was tight, and at Jamie, who clung to her hand, afraid she might let go. Her ex continued, "I'll give you everything you wanted, a real house, stability, comfort. Don't throw away your future on this small life. His gaze flicked toward Daniel dismissively, as if he wasn't worth acknowledging. Clara trembled, her mind flashing back to the church, to the whispers of shame. But then she looked around, the smell of fresh muffins, the crayons scattered on the table, Jamie's hopeful eyes, Daniel's quiet strength. This wasn't a small life. This was a real home. She stepped forward, her voice steady for the first time in years. You left me when I needed you most. You called me too fat, too much, not enough. But here, I'm loved exactly as I am. I don't need your pity. I don't need your approval. I already have a family. Her ex's face hardened. You'll regret this, Clara. But as he turned and walked away, she realized she never felt lighter. Daniel's eyes softened as he approached her. You didn't have to explain yourself, he murmured. We know who you are. We're not going anywhere. Tears filled Clara's eyes as Jamie threw his arms around her waist, shouting, I knew you'd stay, Mom. From that day on, Clara stopped seeing herself as the woman left behind. She was no longer the fat bride dumped at the altar. She was Clara, the mother Jamie prayed for, the partner Daniel had longed for, the woman who rebuilt a family out of broken pieces. Months later, on a sunny afternoon at the park, Daniel surprised her. While Jamie played nearby, Daniel knelt on one knee with a simple ring. Clara, he said, his voice trembling, you walked into our lives when we needed you most. You saved me. You saved my boy. Will you marry me, not because you have to, but because you choose us? Clara's heart swelled. Unlike before, there were no whispers, no shame, no fear. Only love. She nodded through her tears, and Jamie came running, cheering. She said yes. The wedding was small, held in the garden of their new home. This time, when Clara walked down the aisle, she wasn't thinking about fitting into anyone else's expectations. She was thinking about the little boy who called her mom, and the man whose eyes told her she was cherished beyond measure. And when they exchanged vows, it wasn't about perfection. It was about promises kept through struggle, about choosing love every single day. In the end, the bride who was once thrown away at the altar didn't just find a husband, she found a son, a family, and the life she had always deserved. Sparkles, would you like me to now create a short, emotional description with hashtags like a YouTube blurb for this 3-part story?